This computer. All right, guys. So welcome back to part 3 of Grow Your Own Food. And I'm going to put us back into the share screen. Here we are. Going to start this all over again. You know what? Let me see if I can use the other one. Usually it doesn't work so well, but hold on. Talk amongst yourselves. Let me go back to this one and see if it will work.
Yeah. I'll see if it's.
Yeah, just see if it will work.
Perfect.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Okay, so honey, you know what? Let's just pray before we continue.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's bow our heads. Dear Heavenly Father, we just thank you for so much for teaching us so much already today, Lord, as we learn from your nature, Lord. And Lord, please continue to guide us now and help us to remember and implement what we have learned today. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. And guys, we want you to get excited about growing your own food this year. We want you to feel confident about growing your own food this year. This is why we're taking the time to do 3 presentations instead of just the one that we initially thought we were going to do, because we want you to have your best year ever. And so
we want it to be enjoyable.
Exactly, absolutely. So let's talk about starting your seeds indoors, because that's what we do most definitely. And we get big crops, big yields.
So we started mentioning this a little bit in the last part there.
Oh, wait.
Yeah.
Before you continue, does anybody know what that picture is of? Unmute yourself and tell us if you know.
What kind of vegetable that is?
Yeah. Unmute yourself and yell it out.
Kohlrabi.
Yes,
Perfect. Yeah.
absolutely. Kohlrabi. You know, when we started market gardening, I didn't even know what these were. And it was kind of we were introducing these to our customers. Randy knew all about these for years, but a lot of people didn't know about kohlrabi. And but after a few years, more people were buying them and more and more. So that's one thing we liked doing, was introducing new crops each year for our customers to learn about. Okay.
And having different colors.
Yes.
The purple, and we actually grow a white kind of kohlrabi as well.
That's right.
And so we have the 3 different colors, something different. You'll see the green ones in the grocery store, but yeah, nice to grow something different.
Yes. Okay, so
Okay.
transplant.
So we mentioned a little bit earlier about how one of the reasons is that well, let's start at the top here. So some crops won't mature in time unless started early indoors. So things, especially like peppers or tomatoes in a cold climate up here in Canada, you definitely are going to want to start those earlier, right? And so you can transplant them and get a crop. Controlled environment in optimum temperature. That equals better germination and healthier plants that grow quickly and don't take forever. Like a classic one, an easy example would be, say, peas. Like if you Google peas as to when you can plant them in the garden, you'll see it says like as soon as the soil can be worked. Well, in a lot of places in Canada, you can have you could be able to plant it, say, then in maybe the beginning of March. You could plant peas in your garden, but if you plant them, you'll find that either you might have the seeds rot because it's kind of cool and wet conditions, or they will just take forever to actually grow, and you're not going to end up being any further ahead than if you just waited a few weeks later and planted them a little bit later when it's a little bit warmer. But if you and for our first crop of peas, we'll actually plant those indoors and then transplant those even. And so then they get out in the garden, they're already nice, healthy plants, and they just take off and they like that cool spring. Whereas normally if you're planting peas a little bit later because they're just going to sit, if you plant them really early, now you're having the peas mature when it's really hot outside, and then they don't really like that hot weather for maturing. So you're not going to have such a nice crop of peas. So that's just one example of you can really get the head start and get peas way earlier that way. So going through here, warmer for tomatoes, peppers, cucumbers. And for some, like lettuce, brassicas, like in cabbage, broccoli, those kind of things, bok choy. If you're trying to start, if you're trying to plant these seeds in the middle of the summer, if you direct seed them into the garden, they might not even germinate because it's just too hot. Spinach is a one that's especially true for that. If you try planting spinach in the middle of the summer when it's like 30 some degrees out, it's just not going to want to germinate. So, when we do for a market garden, when we would be direct seeding because we grow baby spinach, which you're not going to be able to transplant, then we would do sprinklers. We would have a sprinkler go on, say every half hour or every hour. We'd sprinkle the bed with the sprinkler just to cool the soil and keep it a bit cooler, so we'd have better germination. But even easier for most crops like lettuce, you could just start it in, say, in your basement if you have a nice cool room, or that you can start the season. They'll be up in a few days, and then you can have a nice crop of lettuce in the middle of summer. So less chance of crop failure due to frost. So like say for um oh, what's an example? Yeah, I was trying to think of something that would be affected by frost a lot. Where you could transplant or um
Oh,
yeah, let's see. Well,
could think of that.
tomatoes for sure. I mean,
Yeah.
no one in Canada would direct seed them, probably. But some that, but anyway, if you say direct seed something that can get hit by frost, well, corn would be a good
Mhm.
example for if you want a really nice early crop of corn, and you direct seed it. Well, you might hit that killed by frost, and now you have no crop. But if you transplant that, wait until all chance of frost is past and transplant as a nice healthy plant. Well, now you're way further ahead. You're going to have a nice early crop still with no chance of death by frost. Um, no need for thinning because they're just you transplant them out at the proper spacing. So yeah, you're not wasting seed. Um, Plants get a head start on weeds in the garden. We covered that in our last talk, and enables much higher overall vegetable production. So why is that though? Why would it result in way higher vegetable production?
Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So say if we if we want to have a nice early crop of lettuce, and so if we direct seeded it, it's going to take like 2 months before you actually have a head of lettuce. Whereas if we transplant it, if we'll grow it in the indoors for about 3 weeks, and then we'll transplant it as a nice healthy plant. Now it's only between around 45 days that we have to wait. So we're at 2 weeks ahead, right? Well, now we can plant another crop. We harvest that lettuce out of that area in our garden. Now we can plant something else in that spot. And if we're transplanting, if we have plants already ready to transplant in that spot where we harvested the lettuce, we can plant those, say that even the next day or the same day, we could go and transplant that crop in. And each one, now you're just further ahead. You can get like 3 crops in one area in your garden, whereas normally you might only be one crop in your garden. So
Exactly. And we did that, we were only, ooh, what, about an acre and a half at
yeah, at
most,
most, yeah.
for our market garden. And yet, because of doing it that way, we were constantly replanting and head starting and, all that, we were able to get easily about 5 acres, 6 acres.
Of what most farmers, what other farmers, what they would get, how much area they would need to grow the same amount
Yeah,
that we would.
yeah,
They would be using like, yeah, like 5 or 6 times the area.
exactly.
So just
So
much more intensive. And when it's more
absolutely.
intensive, it's just such a smaller area for weeding, for applying compost, etc.
That's right. Some needful things. What do we need to get our garden started?
So the first thing is fresh seed, and not just fresh seed, but good quality seed. You really, if you're going to take the time to put all this work into a garden, you start with good quality seed. It's maybe a tiny bit more expensive, but some places it really isn't any more expensive. You just get better quality seed. So look for a good quality seed. We'll cover the place where we get our seed from if anybody wants to get seed from, yeah, those places. But yeah, and fresh seed, some you can keep seed fresher if you put it in the freezer. That's a great way to, or any cool place, but and you want it dry, you have to keep it dry. So putting those with those little packets of silica in is a great thing into if you have a container of seeds, put some of those into to make sure they stay really dry. But a freezer will keep it fresh, but you want to make sure it's fresh. If it gets old, and you're going to get weaker plants and much worse germination percentages.
Now, hold on, because I think what we do, yeah, we do go through these things. Okay, so you're just
Yeah.
going to read
Okay.
this and then
Okay.
we go
All
through
right.
the
Yeah.
slides.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So a good soil mix,
Mhm.
flats and trays, of course, something to plant them in. Optimal germination temperatures, optimal growing temperatures. And those are two different things. The germinate, and we'll get into that, the germination temperature and the growing temperature. Optimal growing temperature we have here is 18 to 23 degrees Celsius in general for pretty much all the plants. 18 degrees Celsius at nighttime, yeah. And optimal humidity, 60 to 90%. It's easy to get too much humidity. Um, so sometimes if you might need a dehumidifier or just have good ventilation. You want good ventilation. So a fan is a really good thing to just keep that good ventilation to prevent fungal diseases. The optimum amount of water, and we'll get into that later. Enough light, we'll talk about that. And fertilizer. Okay.
Right. So,
So
see.
yeah, so here's some of the places that we get seeds from. You see here, well, there's Johnny's seeds. That's in the States. So now these days, especially, it's pretty pricey. So we minimize, of course, the amount of seed that we get from the States unless we really can't get it anywhere else. And Osborne quality seeds is one of my favorite, but they're down in the States as well. They're in Washington State. But they have good prices, Osborne's quality seeds, and yeah, and yeah, good prices and very good quality. West Coast Seeds is another. They're very good. They're over on the West Coast, as the name says, of Canada. Salt Spring Island, I believe. They're a little bit pricey for something, but some of their prices are good. But yeah, that's a great one. William Dam Seeds for market gardeners. This is very popular in Canada because they have good quality and especially on the larger amounts, they have really good prices. So that's where we bought most of ours from. TNT Seeds, that's here in Manitoba. Uh, they don't have as much selection, but they have, especially for northern climate, they have quite a few good ones there. Bessie Seeds, that's a really great one. That's over on Prince Edward Island. So these are all online. No, these are, you could of course just buy at your local nursery or whatever hardware store. You're going to find seeds, and those will be okay. But in general, those are probably not going to be near the quality and so and not near the variety. Like we look getting different, like the best tasting carrots. So we want to get the very best that we can get. So you're probably not going to find the really best varieties just if you go to the hardware store or the nursery, the local nursery. Baker Creek Heirloom Seeds, that's actually a Avenus family that own that. That's down in the States. And they have the biggest seed catalog that you can ever imagine. It's just incredible. It's a work of art, just the seed catalog.
Yeah, I think we saw one in Walmart.
That's true. Yeah.
Yes, we saw one in Walmart a few weeks ago.
And they had, yeah, it's not just the seed catalog, they have recipes in there. They've got, oh yeah, it's yeah, pretty incredible. But yeah, they have very tons of rare heirloom seeds.
Yeah, that you will not find anywhere else. Amazing. If you can follow them on Facebook, they, daily, I think daily they put up new pictures of all their different varieties and stuff. It's just fascinating.
And then at the front there on the right, we have Richter's Herbs. That's in Ontario. Yeah, and the William Dance seeds, can't remember if I mentioned, but that one's in Ontario as well. But yeah, Richter's herbs, as the name says, they've got almost every kind of herb that you can imagine.
We just
Uh,
ordered a whole bunch from them,
yeah, a
didn't we?
bunch of
Like
different
30,
unusual kind of
30,
herbs.
40
Yeah.
different herbs to grow this year.
Yeah, we want to have a real big medicinal herb garden. Looking forward to that.
So excited.
So yeah, that's where we get our seeds from. Yeah. Oh, and I did mention
Let's
one
see.
more. That's Heritage Harvest Seeds. Yeah, we don't have that one on here.
That's in
But
Manitoba
yeah,
here.
that's in Manitoba. And they, as the name says, heritage seeds, so heirloom seeds they have. It's all open pollinated. And they have, especially what we love is they have a ton of different kinds of tomato varieties. And they're all good for cold climate because it's for, yes, from Manitoba. So they, yeah, it's a great and great quality as well for the seeds.
Next, flats
So
and
lots and
trays.
trades. So not too much to talk about this. I mean, what we used on our market garden setting is at a totally different scale from home gardeners, but just make sure it has holes in the bottom so you have the drainage. So that's, some people just make their own pots from, say, a margarine container or egg cartons or whatever, but you're going to want to make sure it has the drainage. So make sure it has holes if you're making your own trays. Soil mix, these are the ones that we use, the one with the blue on it, the propagation mix. That's what we use for starting most of our plants. The other one was a number 1 mix. That's a more coarse mix that we'd use for, so when we're potting up our tomato plants. Like our tomato plants, we start in it's called 72 cell flats. So the flat is a 10 by 21.
So,
Yeah,
so this one
yeah, that's a
is a
72. Yeah. So they're about inch and a half square, maybe inch and 3/4 kind of thing. But then once they get too big for that, then we pot them up into 4-inch, 4.5-inch size pots. So that they can get nice, big, healthy plants before we put them out. So we'd use that coarser mix for potting them up. But yeah, what we've moved to back in for much of our time, we would actually just then fertilize and we'll talk about the fertilizing. We would then fertilize every week or two with a mixture of fish fertilizer and seaweed fertilizer. But now going more to actually just adding some good quality compost to the soil mix, or you can buy soil mixes with the compost added in there. So it already has that fertilizer in there, and then you're not going to need to fertilize with the seaweed and the fish fertilizer, unless you see your plants need it, but they probably shouldn't. So here's some optimal germination temperature. You might just want to take a picture of this with your phone.
Before you do that, those are our beet
That's
seedlings.
Swiss
No,
chard, actually, yeah.
that's right. That's Swiss
They
chard.
look
Yeah.
very similar.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
looking at the coloring and thinking the red and no, that's my mistake.
Yeah.
Swiss
Yeah,
chard.
and you can be forgiven for that because they actually Swiss chard and beets. An interesting little fun fact about that is that they actually, like hundreds of years ago, sometime in the past, they were one plant, and they developed one more for the leaf, and then developed the other one for the root. So they really are originally the same plant.
Yeah,
So that's why the greens taste very close to the same
they
from
are
the
related.
beet greens and the Swiss chard.
They're so beautiful. Oh my goodness. This chard, when it's big and gorgeous, my favorite thing to harvest. Hands down. I just love it.
And you love that on the display, a nice big,
Yes, big
yeah, at the
benches
market.
at the
Yeah.
market. Oh, beautiful.
Made my wife all happy. Okay, so yeah, we won't go through all these things.
Yeah.
Yeah, just take a picture of that, or write it down if you want, or we can send you
Yeah, we can send you
yeah,
the slides of this. If you
yeah,
want, just email us after and I can send you out the slides.
yeah. But in general, things in the cucumber family, so the squashes, the melons, the cucumbers, they like it really nice and warm for germinating. And same thing in the Solanaceae family, so the tomatoes and peppers. And the eggplant, they need it really warm for for germinating, as you can see here, but for tomatoes between 24 to 29. And on the high end is the best temperature. So more like around, say 27, 28 is ideal. You see melons here all the way up to 32. So yeah, like it nice and warm for germinating. And that's very, very key, because if you're not having those optimal temperatures, you can have those seeds. People will say, "Oh, why aren't my seeds coming up?" Well, that's probably the reason why. Yeah.
Some more numbers.
Okay, optimum amount of water. Yeah, so this is another area that people can easily go to wrong. Too much water is usually the biggest problem. Um, if you're keeping those things wet all the time, then you can have all sorts of issues like damping off disease. Yeah,
What does
just
that look like, damping off disease?
I think not sure if we have a picture of that anywhere. I think we might at some point. Yeah, we do have a picture later on. And so
Okay.
yeah, we'll talk about the damping off disease.
All
But
right.
but the plant, it will just shrivel up at the right at the soil level, basically, just above the soil level. The stem will shrivel, it will get all kind of skinny,
Mhm.
and then it'll keel over the plant and die on you. And that's one of the things you most don't want in your so when you're starting plants, because it can quickly spread and take out a lot of your plant starts. So use room temperature water. Uh, too wet, yeah, too wet for too long cause damping off. Let soil dry between waterings. A great thing to do also that will also help prevent damping off disease is if, say if you have your tray with your plants, if you have you can buy trays at the garden center that have no holes in them. So you can actually just put your water in that tray underneath, and then it's called bottom watering. And so instead of watering with the whatever a hose or whatever on top or a watering can, just put water in that tray underneath, and it will just soak the water up in and water that way. So when you're before that would be only after the plants have already germinated, because you need to keep the surface moist when you're germinating seeds. But after they're already growing,
Right.
you could do the bottom watering.
Right. And we're doing that right this second because
Yeah.
we're away from home for about 10 days down doing a seminar. We'll talk about in a little bit. And so
That's how we get it, so they will keep moist for while we're gone. That we won't come back to a bunch of dead plants.
Exactly.
So we're praying that they'll all be good for these 10 days. Watering in the morning, same thing, although not quite as crucial for indoor. But still, you're probably going to be having cooler temperatures at night. If you're turning your thermostat down, and they do better if it's a little bit cooler. So always best to water in the morning when you're not going to be cooling the soil down, or at night. Optimal numbers for light. Yeah, enough light. So window ledge is not enough light. I mean, people, you can do that, but they're going to be much more spindly. They're not going to be near as healthy. It's just not giving enough sunlight through those windows.
Yeah. Remember, this is about germination.
Well, no, just for growing indoors. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, a house plant is a different thing. Well, yeah, most of the house plants that you grow there, they don't mind a little bit of shade, but still, even like if you took a house plant and put it out, say in the summertime, and put it directly out into the outdoors, you'll see how it's really not used. It really hasn't been getting the amount of light it really should be getting, because it will have a lot of sun scald. Um, but so you're gonna want some like fluorescent lights is what we use. You can do LED lights. Ideally, you're gonna want to have the full spectrum grow lights. We don't actually, and because we get our plants getting sunlight as soon as possible, we still get good healthy plants, but you'll be even better if you get the specific grow lights. Um, plants planted before mid-March need the extra lighting. So, even if you're, say, growing in a greenhouse, say if you're in a little bit warmer climate, and you're starting, say, tomatoes, say in February. Um, in
This is
Canada,
This is live.
Please
so
mute yourselves.
this top one here. There you go.
Wow,
Yeah.
okay, that's okay. Go ahead.
So say for someone that's planting before that mid-March in Canada, in a say in a greenhouse later on, once it after mid-March, you would have enough light in that greenhouse because in the greenhouse compared to a window, like a window inside a house is at vertical, right? Whereas a greenhouse you're having overhead, so you're getting a lot more direct rays. You're getting a lot more sunlight in a greenhouse compared to a window. Um, but so for the extra life, so for the LED or fluorescent, you're gonna want 16 hours minimum. You can be up to even like 20 hours if you want. It's you could even go 24 hours. It's not really optimum, but the plants will do okay even with 24 hours, just leaving them on. But yeah, you can just get a timer, just for, yeah, it's easy. Just get a timer to set that. And then have those lights nice and close, 3 to 4 inches above the plants. Don't have them up way high, otherwise they're not getting enough light, and then they're going to be getting all straggly, reaching up for that light. So
There's a
yeah,
picture.
here's a picture you can see of we have some cucumber plants there started. And with the lights just yeah, just like 3 inches above there. And so they're growing nice and they're not getting too spindly there. There's some other pictures of our grow lights there. And so we have these trays and we have our shelving. So you see how the trays are 20 inches long. And so we do two of those lights. So it'd be 4 bulbs for each tray that is actually lighting that. So you want to make sure you have plenty of lights for your trays.
More numbers.
Okay, so optimal growing temperatures is going to be a little bit cooler. As you see here, you don't need those 30 degrees. And if you have it really warm, it will make your plants growing too fast and then they can still become spindly. Whereas if you have it cooler temperatures, like 18 to 23, that's just normal room temperature in a house, right? So that's going to make them grow a little bit slower, which is what you want. You don't want them growing so fast that they get spindly. And 18 degrees Celsius at nighttime, so yeah. Optimal humidity, 60 to 90%. Yeah, I mentioned the good ventilation, having a fan going just gently, but the fan will it'll make much stronger stems as well as giving for the ventilation. It'll also make the stems stronger because they're getting used to having a little bit of wind on them. So yeah, so fertilizer, as I mentioned, if you aren't adding compost or buying soil mixed with compost, then you can do this fertilizing every 1 to 2 weeks with the mixture, and you just follow the instructions on the bottles. You can put in a bit of bone meal and kelp meal in the mix. That would be actually when you say add the compost to the soil mix, you can add a bit of bone meal and kelp meal just to give a really nice fertilizer there for them. Okay, and here this is, yeah, we already talked about this. So this is the ratio. So if you're making your own soil mix where it doesn't have it added already, so the amount of compost to the soil mix should be 10 to 30% compost to soil mix. And yeah, so it's gonna be bought with the compost already added. Yeah. So yeah, so here's the common mistakes. Temperatures are too cool or it can be too hot, but most people probably would be too cool, especially for germinating. That's very common. Planting seeds too deep, especially really tiny seeds. If they're really tiny seeds, we don't even cover them with soil a lot of times. We'll just kind of press them into the soil and then just water it. And yeah, if you plant it too deep, then they might never find the surface. So they, yeah. Watering too much. Yeah, you just want that. You want this soil to dry out a bit, not till the plants are healed right over and ready to die, but you want them to dry out. And then not enough light, not fertilizing enough. So just be paying attention if if your plants aren't looking, if they're looking kind of pale, not looking very healthy, well, then they need some fertilizer. It's
Gorgeous picture.
yeah, just some of our veggies
Yeah,
there.
the colors, you guys, just beautifulfulness.
Can't wait to make a meal from our garden this
Exactly.
summer.
Absolutely, that God has provided. Okay, here's
Okay,
that damping off
yeah,
phase.
yeah. So here we see those pictures here. That especially the top one is kind of the classic. That's what you usually see right at the above the soil level. You see where the stem gets brown and gets all thin, and then the plant will die soon after this picture. The plant would be dying. So yeah, leaves will show signs of wilt, even the soil is moist. So that's where a lot of people they think, oh, it's wilting a little bit. Oh, it must need some water. But before you water, check the soil. If it's moist, well, that's not the issue.
And checking the soil isn't always just the top of the soil.
Yeah,
Put
put
your
your
finger
yeah,
in like about an inch
yeah,
and just, yeah, if that's moist, then
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, very good. Using potting mix with good drainage. Yeah, and so I mean, some people will just get some soil from, say, their garden, and that really isn't ideal because it doesn't have the drainage that you really need. So best to buy some good potting mix from the garden center. Use that. I mentioned use pots with drainage holes, very key. Water in the morning, and then use clean, warm water. Yeah, don't want to use shock them with cold water, especially your heat-loving plants like in the cucumbers, melons, those kind of things, the tomatoes, peppers. You definitely want to use a minimum room temperature or just slightly warm would be perfect.
But after you transplanted them into the fields, into your garden, then you can be.
Yeah, but if you have even then like in the springtime when you still cold water is never a great thing, even actually in the garden. So if you're yeah, I mean then they will survive, but like the ideal is if you can have say a big container of water that you can keep more at room temperature. Like say if you like in our greenhouse in the spring, we like to have a big container of water in there that keeps warmer instead of just putting real like because like in the spring, first thing the water is ice cold. And so that can still be shocking.
In the
Yeah.
summertime,
Yeah,
though,
in the summer, yeah, definitely. Yeah, then
you
it's
can
fine.
use
Yeah.
regular water.
Yeah. Yeah, then they won't mind being cooled down a little bit.
Yeah.
A lot of times, yeah.
So how do
Okay.
we prevent that damping off, that thinning of the
Yeah.
stems
So that good air circulation.
in the
Um,
soil?
well, so
Or
no, the good air circulation that will because if you're having all these plants in there, then they're creating, especially if they're planted closer together, they can create a moist environment right around them so air flowing through them will just keep it from getting too humid right around the stems.
Mhm.
Of pretty much a foolproof way is if you're having issues with this, instead of covering your seeds with soil, just cover with you see that picture of the vermiculite. It's just a type of rock, organic, not organic, a volcanic rock. And so it's yeah, you can just buy this at any garden center, the vermiculite, and you just cover that instead of the soil, and that will totally prevent the damping off disease. Don't overcrowd seedlings for that reason that you need that airflow to prevent the getting too much moisture. Don't start fertilizing until plants have at least their first true leaves. So that's if you are adding fertilizer, wait until they're up and at them before you fertilize. Don't water too much. Yeah. So if you are having damping off treatment, sprinkling cinnamon on the soil surface, because cinnamon is antifungal, so that works great. Cayenne pepper works also. You can do turmeric powder as well. Garlic and cloves also work. I've never tried those, but the cinnamon and the cayenne pepper we tried. Mostly the cinnamon we use. That works great. Hydrogen peroxide. I haven't actually done this one, but this one is supposed to be very effective. So 1 teaspoon of hydrogen peroxide in 2 cups of water, and just use that to water your plants, and that will also, because it's yeah, it kills the fungus. Just
It is
like
beautiful.
nice, beautiful onions there.
Those red onions, they're just, oh, spectacular to look at. They're just beautiful, beautiful. And I think planting is
Okay,
next.
yeah. So now that you have these plants, that they're nice, healthy plants that you started, and it really it's worthwhile to take the time if you can to really have good, healthy transplants. Sometimes ours haven't been perfectly healthy, and usually they'll still, it's amazing, they're so resilient.
Very resilient, I tell you.
Especially some kinds, I mean, say like lettuce transplants, you could just throw those on the garden. You don't even have to put them in the soil and they still probably grow.
That's right. Sometimes when we're planting so many, we're planting thousands, for the market gardening. And if there's one that isn't so great, you might just toss it into the walkway kind of thing. And then a few weeks later, you're walking along.
It's a nice big healthy plant.
It's like, what is that plant doing there in the walkway? It's the one you discarded, and it's so resilient. It's just blossomed without even being planted in the soil. It was just on top. So God has built life into these plants.
Not all of them are so resilient, and you definitely want to do it optimally. So
Right way.
yeah, do it the right way. But yeah, it's amazing how some of them still will take off. But anyway, so transplant when roots have filled the cell or pot, but are not yet root bound. So that's an important one. You don't want. I hope you are all, if you have a question of what is root bound, that's just where the roots, if you just pull the plant out of the pot, and the roots are just totally wound around and packed in there, that's root bound. And so then for most of them, if they are root bound, because sometimes that just happens, you can gently loosen that root ball, or what we would normally do is just use a knife. For a lot of times, just use a knife on one or two sides, just cut in a little bit, and that will just stop those roots from going around in the inside of the pot like that. Because otherwise, if you don't do that, if you plant it when it's root bound, those roots will still want to just keep on growing, and that's stuck together. They're not going to want to go out quickly into the surrounding soil, and so they're not going to take off. So you want to stop that spiraling of those roots. However, for in the cucurbit family, so the cucumbers, melons, or squash, definitely don't touch those roots even. They're very sensitive roots. So you make sure those aren't root bound for those ones. You want to make sure that they're planted at the right time, and then be very gentle with those roots when you're transplanting from the cucurbit family. One very important thing for when you're transplanting your plants, which will really make them take off, and because there's a thing called transplant shock, which if you have the transplant shock, it can set your plants back by even like a couple weeks, or sometimes if it's really bad transplant shock, it might even kill them, or they might be affected for the whole gardening season. So this is what we do. We put some of the seaweed fertilizer and the fish fertilizer, and so we never worked. So these are very forgiving, so we wouldn't even measure them out. We just pour in, it was maybe a quarter cup of each into like a big tray, and then we would just put our mix it with water, in this big tray. That was bigger than the pots or the trays that we were putting in there, and then we just soak our pots in there for 5 to 10 minutes, or even longer. It doesn't hurt them. And before we actually transplant them into the garden, this just gets them full of nutrients, soaking in that fertilizer mixture. And then when you transplant, it really reduces that shock of the transplanting. Okay. So before transplanting outside, hardening off plants. So when they're not used to the direct sunlight, when you're having them indoors and they're used to fluorescent lights, which aren't near as strong light as the sunlight, you need to harden them off. You need to get them used to that direct sunlight. You need to get them used to the more extremes of temperatures, get them used to the wind outside. So over a few days, the prior in the week prior to transplanting, you're going to want to gradually, the first day you might only have them out in the outdoors in the direct sunlight for maybe an hour or two maximum. And then the next day you could double that. And then the day following that, you could double that again. And then after that, they'll be totally ready to transplant. If you are going to be covering those transplants with row cover, and this is what we would do in the springtime for most of our transplants, because this is we would cover them with floating row cover as soon as we transplant them. Then you don't need to do the hardening off because they're kind of semi-protected with that row cover, and then that will get them gradually hardened off instead of it's not you're not getting such extreme sun rays through that row cover. So that made it way easier for us, because the row cut the hardening off is especially when you're dealing with many thousands
Exactly.
of transplants, and it is time consuming. So this made it a lot less time consuming for us. And then transplant at optimal spacing. That's very key. It's just
That
a
row cut.
picture of our early days. This was a long time ago, and but yeah, you can see the row cover there. And there, we would get row cover that we could cover multiple beds. And you can get row cover if you want that could cover even like 30 feet wide. You can get very, very big uh, row cover. Ours were 12 feet wide, as so we covered two beds with ours. So transplanting tips. Transplants need to be firmly rooted by pressing them lightly into the soil. Brassicas, so that's in the cabbage, broccoli family, especially cabbage. They do better if the soil is firmly packed around them. So we'd plant the say the cabbage plants, and then we'd actually step on either side of them and pretty much put our full weight on them, and they do a lot better with that more firmly packed soil for some reason. Make sure the root ball is buried completely. So when done correctly, the soil right around the plant should be recessed a bit from the rest of the garden bed. And that way it holds water better for the plant. So it makes kind of a little well, if you can picture it right around the base of the plant, a well of soil. So it just will, instead of the water running, if you running off, say if you planted that, I've seen people transplanting where they make a little hole and put the root ball in there, but they didn't dig it deep enough. So then they just get soil from the surrounding area mounded up. And so now you have like it looks like this. You have the plant up here and it's kind of mounded up. And now you have the opposite effect where now the water is running off and that root ball can completely dry out very quickly. And it's not, and if say if you're watering with a sprinkler, it's the water just runs off. It's not going to keep that root ball moist. So
Yeah.
so that's a really important. It's easy to do it to do it right. It doesn't take any work, but it creates all sorts of problems if you don't do it right. Then so for the next several days after transplanting, make sure the soil stays moist. That's very crucial.
Like right after you transplant, you want to be watering right after.
Yeah, water really well. And even like for our tomatoes, because we plant the tomatoes in deep holes because the tomato plants will grow roots all along the stem. So we take off all the bottom leaves and we plant them as deep as we can, basically. And before we cover up with soil, we'll actually fill those holes with water. And we put in a bit of just for as an added tip, we put in a bit of bone meal for calcium, and we also put in some kelp meal, about maybe a quarter cup of each, mixed with a little bit of organic fertilizer. We put that all in the hole for tomatoes because they are heavy feeders. And then we put the water in, let that drain away, and then we cover with soil, and then we water again. And
Yes.
so we make it really moist because the plants when we were first transplanting, you really want to reduce the transplant shock. You want to make it just perfect environment for the roots to quickly start growing into the surrounding soil. And so, yeah, that's a very important thing. Here's a picture, and yeah,
He doesn't like this
I don't like
picture.
this picture. Yeah, we were supposed to, this is our early days. Not, we did much better later. But you can, yeah, see some of our lettuce and stuff. Yeah. Not sure why you got that picture. Anyway, okay. But yeah, good picture actually, just to show that we don't do things perfectly either. We deal with weeds and stuff sometimes, and sometimes things get out of control, especially on our market garden where we're just busy harvesting all the time.
Me too.
So,
Where are we?
okay, yeah, so we do, okay, yeah, these would be things to take pictures of. Yeah, so I figured out that we have these in here so you can see the transplant spacing that we use.
You don't need to go through all of them.
Yeah, so just take a picture of it, and if you don't have a camera with you, then we can send you the slides if you ask for them. So, yeah.
And of course, these videos are going to be up on our YouTube channel for you to watch at any time.
Yeah, and there's for the other ones. Yeah.
Okay, we're coming to the end. Some tips for beginners. And somebody had asked that question on Monday, what's your best tip for us? And we talked about starting small so that you're not overwhelming yourself. We farm on a large scale.
And even now that we're home gardeners, we still are gonna have a very big garden.
Yeah, it's gonna be different for us this year, not having
It's
50
gonna feel very
plants,
small.
and not having all of this stuff. It's gonna be a joy. But yeah, starting small for if you're just beginning, and that way you're not gonna overwhelm yourself. We have customers who come and say, "Oh, I started a garden this year, but you know what? I work during the day, I come home at night, I'm tired, the weeds were getting out of hand. I couldn't take it, so I just stopped. It was overwhelming." Start small.
And yeah, and if be honest with yourself of how much time you think you're gonna have.
Mhm.
People springtime, you just feel so ambitious.
Yes.
Like yeah, and then you come to June and the rain, June is often rainy and the weeds, and so the warm and rainy makes a whole ton of weeds for July.
Oh, yeah.
And then the weeds are, 3 feet tall by July sometime, and yeah, and then you're just overwhelmed. So, you know, if you know that you really don't have the time, I tell you, landscape fabric is a wonderful, wonderful invention. And yeah, make it easy on yourself.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Connect with others. If you're feeling that, oh, I don't know if I can do this, many places have community gardens. And you can go there and just get excited with other people, see what they're doing, ask your questions. But connecting with others just makes it a really nice thing to do the gardening, the social aspect of it.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And researching appropriate, the plants that you want to grow. If you're, now with YouTube and with Google, I tell you, there's no excuse for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have so much information. Sometimes it can be confusing because you read conflicting information, but for growing plants, much of it is pretty much a consensus on how to grow them properly. And yeah, there's so much good stuff online that you can, yeah, really learn. And then for the most part, growing vegetables is not hard. If you make that good, healthy soil, they're gonna do their thing. They're gonna just want to grow.
Exactly. And when we talk about researching appropriate plants, that can be like plants that will grow in your
Oh,
zone.
okay, that's what, yeah, zero those, yes,
Your
that's what you're
zone.
meaning, yeah. Oh, yeah, they're very important, yeah.
Yeah. So for example, now that we've moved to Manitoba, we're in a different zone, growing zone than we were in BC. So we were having to look through, for the various varieties that would grow in our, what is it, zone 2B or 3?
Yeah.
We're much further down than we were before. So we can't grow some of the more heatiest, the heat loving
We're still like pushing the envelope,
Yeah.
but be aware, if you're trying to grow unfortunately, my dear wife, trying to grow mangoes in Manitoba, it is going to be a little bit of a challenge.
Come on, you're a good gardener. You should know how to do this.
But yeah, so it'll make it much easier if you're growing ones that are appropriate to your climate. And for, there's say with tomatoes, there's some that are much quicker maturing that are going to be good for if you're in a cold climate, and some are going to be able to handle the heat a lot better. So look for the different varieties, like like we say for spinach.
Mhm.
There's varieties of spinach that can handle the summer heat, whereas other varieties don't handle it at all. So if you're trying to grow the ones that should be growing in the cool weather and trying to grow those in the middle of summer, you're going to be disappointed because they're going to immediately go to seed pretty much. So that's where appropriate varieties is really important to do your
Absolutely.
research.
I think that's the end of it. Is that our
Yes.
gorgeous celery?
Yeah, there's a bunch of our celery there.
Wow.
And once again, you see here how everything's planted close enough together that it's covering the soil,
Mhm.
not giving any room for those weeds to come up. You'll have the occasional one, but by and large, yeah, it just there's some of those are salad turnips at the top there, and then our radishes at the bottom. Some of our other veggies here. We love our veggies.
I
Can't
tell
wait
you
to be
what,
eating
guys,
some
and
of
you're gonna love your veggies this year. Just get yourself started. Just no fear. This is what God wants for us to be growing our own stuff. So, in summary, by learning from nature, it doesn't have to be this back-breaking ordeal, with all the pests and all the stuff. Just study to show yourself approved and then apply what you've studied, what you're learning. And then your garden can be turned into that Garden of Eden, lush, healthy, full of bountiful harvest to reward you for all the work that you didn't have to do because you followed, some of these tips that we've shared with you. So that's the end of the presentation. What questions do you have? Let's go to the chat and let's see if there's any questions here, or put your hand up if you want to ask some questions. Hold on here. Would love to share this info with our homeschooling families, especially the kids. Absolutely. And if you want to have a Zoom session with us, teaching the kids in your families, let us know. We'll do that as well. But we can send you the slides, or you can have them just watch the video, whatever you'd like to do.
or both. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Comfrey. Doesn't comfrey have high
Oh,
levels
yes,
of
the
alkaloids,
controversial.
which can cause liver damage? You know what? Hold on. Let me just see if there's any other questions first about the other stuff. This summer, while eating our fruits, veggies, are there steps we need to take prepare those seeds for later planting, for saving your
Oh, if you're
seeds?
saving seeds. Well, first of all, you're going to need to make sure you have open pollinated plants. So like heirloom plants if you're trying to save the seeds.
Anything
Yeah,
else?
sorry, just going back to the question again here.
Oh, sorry.
Are there steps we need to take to prepare those seeds for later planting? Yeah, that's kind of the whole big subject about saving seeds. Um, some seeds are really easy, like tomato seeds. That's a super easy one, and they don't cross-pollinate easily with other. Say if you're having different varieties of tomato fairly close together, they're not gonna. So that's an easy one. Tomatoes. Yeah, that's for each different one. There's different steps to take. So it's a little bit complicated trying to answer
Videos
that.
and such.
Yeah, you need to,
YouTube.
yeah, or a book. There's a lot of
Mhm.
ones on seed saving, because that's a whole other topic to really, yeah, properly address that.
Mhm. And guys, we want to be creating a Facebook gardening group for any of you who want to join that and, show your pictures and ask advice and all that kind of stuff. So we'll be sending out information about that, hopefully within the next week or so. Get our gardening group started.
Okay.
All right, let's see what other question. Is Epsom salt good for tomato plants?
Yeah, definitely. Yep. Yeah, I haven't done that for a while, but I have done that before. I can't remember the exact, I haven't written down somewhere the ratio, but yeah, Epsom salt has a lot of magnesium in it. It speeds up ripening of your tomatoes, so that's a great thing to do say in August, it will really help to get your tomatoes ripen faster. But yeah, do a little Google on that about the ratio because I can't remember offhand about the ratio of how much Epsom salts.
Well, you can ask that question in the gardening group on Facebook too.
Yeah, this is a great one. Do you use hoops with your row cover cloth? If you're direct seeding, you don't need to use the hoops. They can still be beneficial because it makes it more like because it's holding the row cover off the plants. It makes even more of like a little greenhouse under there. But say with our carrots in the spring, we typically wouldn't. We would just cover the beds with when we plant the seeds, we would cover it with row cover, and that still creates a nice warm environment under there. So we get earlier carrots. And it also keeps the carrot seeds moist because carrot seeds, if they dry out when they're before they've come up, before they germinated, they need to be kept constantly moist. So you're gonna have lots of issues with germination with them.
Right.
But with anything transplanted, because those are fragile little plants that you transplant, then we would put hoops over the plants so that it keeps the row cover from rubbing up. Especially if you're in a windy area, if you didn't use hoops, then it would, the wind with the row cover, it's gonna would knock probably almost, could kill some of your plants. So
Good question.
yeah, so that was a great one.
Thank you so much. Would you be interested in teaching youth for Pathfinder clubs in Washington State? What a wonderful opportunity to equip the next generation. Absolutely, we would.
Definitely, yeah.
Absolutely. So Jeannie, just send us an email and we'll talk further about that. Then going back to, I don't see there's any other questions. Going back to the comfrey question about the alkaloids on and their effect on our health.
Yeah, this is one that we're not here to give. I mean, that gets into like taking something internally that we don't want to.
Yeah,
we're not giving medical advice. We'll tell you that for ourselves. It was from our research. We have no concern as long as you do it in moderation. The studies that were done or the cases where there were issues where people were taking there's this first of all very rare people have been eating comfrey for thousands of years over in Europe and they just treat it like a vegetable in some of those countries. They feed it to their livestock like lots. I mean, it's known as like a miracle thing for livestock. And so, but in the studies that were done on, I think on rats or whatever, they fed them at amounts of comfrey that would be kind of like us eating like truckloads of comfrey and eating that every day constantly, on an ongoing basis. And then then you can develop issues because there are those alkaloids, but yeah, we did have I did have some articles on that. I hopefully I still have the link. I wouldn't share it now, but if you want to, we could share you some
email us if
articles.
you want some further information.
But yeah, definitely. The roots are the most potent. That I wouldn't use that internally. But except if very limited basis, maybe for like a week or two kind of thing. But the leaves are more mild, but still I wouldn't do that for just a constant basis, a whole bunch of that. Having a bit of tea probably every day even probably wouldn't be a big deal, but if you're eating a whole bunch kind of thing every day. But yeah, do your own research that's all we can say about that.
There are comfrey forums on Facebook and lots of people with lots of experience with comfrey. So you might want to join one of those forums if you've got other questions. And Carolyn is saying, my understanding with comfrey is that it's the roots, yes, that we should use with caution, not the leaves. Yeah, definitely. But I mean, talking about comfrey for fertilizer.
Yeah, we should. Yeah, we mentioned it during the break.
But a little bit now, and then we'll let everybody get going.
Yeah, we actually like for our garden here, we'll be having a whole separate like garden patch that will be comfrey that will be growing, both for medicinal uses as well as for fertilizer, because comfrey, you can use it just adding to your compost pile. You can make like compost tea, like just with comfrey tea for your plants with it as well. You could just apply the leaves to your soil. But it's one of the most complete, perfect fertilizers for your garden, especially for tomato plants. It's particularly amazing for tomato plants.
Yes.
So
Yeah, friends of ours who they do a lot of gardening, and she was saying that last year or the year before, she had just spread the comfrey leaves like right on top of the soil of her tomatoes. And she said she only did it on one part of her tomatoes and left the other parts without the comfrey. And she said
she
she
actually
could see.
put that in the, she put it in the, well, she did on top. I think she also put the leaves when she was popping in the holes.
Okay.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
the
I think
thing
so.
is that
Yeah,
she
yeah,
said that she
yeah.
could see a distinct difference between the ones that had comfrey on them and the ones that didn't. Distinct difference with respect to their growth and all the rest of it. So
Yeah, and
amazing
we
stuff with
actually
comfrey.
have a book on that is strictly all about using comfrey as a fertilizer.
Oh,
A whole book is just on that one subject. So yeah,
so we'll
it's
be
an
doing a
amazing thing.
lot of that this year. Yeah. Nola says, thank you so much for investing yourselves and teaching this material to us.
Our
Nola,
pleasure.
thank you so much for attending. Absolutely. So as we are winding down, guys, just want to mention to you, hold on, the Gardening Club, keep an eye out for that. Healthy Living Club, keep an eye out for that. The Brain and Gut Connection is our next Monday night health club offering. That's going to be April 13 with Dr. Daniel Saw. And he's going to be talking about the amazing interactions that occur between your brain and your gut. Fascinating stuff, just fascinating. And what is happening right this second for the next, well, we just started last evening, and this continues until next Monday here in Beausejour, Manitoba.
Which is half hour out of Winnipeg. So if you're in the
Yeah.
Winnipeg area,
Come on out and join us. Does God care? And we had a great start last evening, great food and great fellowship with people. It was just really nice. So come on out and join us. That is, oh, wait a second, just to let you know, this is all going to be uploaded to YouTube. Part one is already there, so you can watch part one. Part two and part three that we did today, we'll aim to have that done for you in the next few days, edited, and then we'll upload it to YouTube as well. You can be watching our previous presentations. They're all there for you. And our website, visit our website called doesgodcare.ca, and you will find recipes there, natural remedy videos, stuff for kids, lots of resources that you can, download or watch. And also, if you're interested in Bible studies, you'll find an assortment there. So that's the end of it all, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. Let me stop the share just in case there's any hands up for anybody who has any more questions. And I think, yeah, we'll stop the video here as well. Hold on. There it is. Bye-bye.